Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 645. And today's date is April 18th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand Greece is coming down to the wire. They owe a lot more money to the IMF, and we can see at this point in time that they've been diving into the pension funds. They've been looking for cash anywhere they possibly can find it. And we see right now that Greece might be looking to exit. The IMF has been telling us that no, don't worry about it. They're not going to be exiting the Eurozone. And every time we hear the government officials or central bankers tell us something, it always seems to be the opposite of what really happens. And we're seeing now that one of the proposed measures to be implemented in Greece just before or during its default and or exit from the Eurozone, in addition to pervasive capital controls, of course, is the implementation of a parallel currency. Just 24 to 36 hours ago, Greece might resort to IOUs or capital controls to avoid a disorderly default and keep the banks afloat for now. First, it could issue IOUs to pay public sector workers and pensioners, and then free up some money to repay its debt. But this could cause economic chaos in Greece. People will riot. People will be upset. We also see that Russia might loan Greece up to $5 billion in their Turkish pipeline. Now, we see Russia out today saying, no, we are not going to do this. Russia denied the reports. A German magazine put this out, German magazine Spiegel. They're saying we are not going to give Greece a loan of up to $5 billion. And we're going to have to see and watch how this plays out, because Russia could step in. We know that Tsipras met with Putin. We understand they signed economic deals. We understand the pipeline will be going in. And if they do dump the Eurozone, we realize that Russia would remove the food embargo. And this would spur economic growth. And we understand the government of Greece has been looking at all different ways to get around this debt. Well, they're coming down to the wire, and it looks like they might have no other option but to default at this time, to leave the Eurozone. But don't worry, the bankers have already protected themselves with their special little committee to say that, you know what, these credit default swaps, there was no default here, and that means we don't have to pay out any of this. And we can see the bankers always seem to protect their interests. The interest of the people of the country, the interest of the country, they could care less about. We see out in England that the number of British people relying on food banks is expected to reach 1 million, despite a huge increase in the number of people that are working. How can this be? It makes no sense. Despite 2 million more people being in work now than in 2010, the number of people using food banks has soared. Under the government, too many working people are being paid so little that they can't afford to feed their families. With 1.5 million more in jobs paying less than the living wage and a huge rise in the number of people on 0-hour contracts, it is getting tougher and tougher for people to make it. We see this here in the United States. We are a part-time nation. The Eurozone, UK, Canada, it's becoming a part-time system. All the good jobs are disappearing. There is no economic growth, and people are losing their good jobs. They can't find the good jobs, and they're going into part-time work where they can't bring enough money in. And we see it here in the United States. This is why most of the people that are on government assistance, they are working like crazy just to make it. And it's not enough, and they need to go out to the government to get subsidized just to survive. And we understand the economy is completely falling apart. The Mortgage Banker Association, the applications once again have fallen by 2.3%. And when we look at this, we see, well, yeah, We saw the mortgage applications drop from September 2012 all the way down up to this point. In January, we had a bump up, and what started in January? The new programs, Freddie and Fannie, 3% down. We'll accept the subprime people. And we also saw banks implementing their new program, 0% down. We'll pay for the closing costs. Builders are saying, listen, we'll pick up the closing costs, expenses. Don't worry about it. And we can see in January, it spiked right back up. But guess what? It's falling once again. And if you come to the X22, you can see the graph of this. And right now, we are going to dive down as we move through the spring and summer. And you have to remember, for real estate, the spring and summer months they're basically the hot time for real estate. Once we get out of August, that's it for real estate. So we're going to have to watch and see how real estate performs. I think we're going to see a tiny little bump up, and I think things are going to really accelerate and get worse. This is what we saw last year. If you go back to my previous reports back in April, May, June, you can hear what I said. In that time, I said we're going to see a bump up in the beginning of the year, and then it's just going to fade off. And that's exactly what we saw, and we're going to see the same thing occur right now. And actually, this time, it's going to be worse because we are at the end game here. Americans are tapped out. We don't have jobs. We don't have credit. We don't have money saved. There's nothing else to give. And it's showing up all over the country. It's showing up in retail. It's showing up in real estate. It's showing up in food stores where people are just going in using government help to buy the food. It's showing up everywhere. But of course, our government, they're looking the other way. They don't care. They're so blinded with pretty much everything. They aren't really doing the research. Our officials who are supposed to be working for the people are not doing their job. And we see right now what they're worried about is themselves. What they're worried about is making more money. What they're worried about is pleasing the corporations that put them into power, countries that put them into power. And we know come June 1st, it's a very important day. Because what we're seeing is that the Patriot Act will expire automatically without reauthorization from Congress. Naturally, this is causing a panic attack within the heart of NSA, FBI, and all the authoritarian lackey legislators in Washington. The U.S. government's central bankers are now figuring out ways they can sneak it into another piece of legislation without anyone noticing. What did they do? Well, they're going to try to sneak it into the USA Freedom Act. The USA Freedom Act is back, and it appears to be the vehicle being used to reauthorize Section 215 of the Patriot Act. They are going to do whatever they have to do to continually spy on the people. And I don't even think they need the Patriot Act. I think they would just do it anyhow to spy on the people. And you have to remember the reasons why they are spying. They're doing this to track everyone, your purchases, your movements, who you're friends with. They also use it to blackmail judges, government officials, to push their own agendas forward and have people do things they normally wouldn't do. I mean, look at Obamacare. The judge said it was completely unconstitutional, and then all of a sudden, he changed his mind. And after he said it was constitutional, he left for 2 weeks, avoiding the press and everything else. They must have had something on him. And we could see that Congress, they don't know how to pass reauthorization, so they are trying to sneak it in. They can't explain to the American people saying, well, we had to pass it because they said they were going to reform. They said they were going to stop this. Advocates of the bill in both congressional chambers, including its original architects, have been laboring for 8 weeks in a marathon negotiations to revive the USA Freedom Act. The revived bill would extend the expiring provisions of the Patriot Act for a still undetermined number of years. And this is all being done behind closed doors. The bill would not abridge NSA collection of Americans, international communications, nor prevent the NSA or the FBI from warrantlessly searching through its troves of Americans' identifying information. Nor would it restrict a constellation of surveillance efforts. And we can see, again, their main agenda right now is to remove the rights of the people. Well, the only way they can do that is if the people say, yes, we accept this. Well, guess what? We don't accept this. We don't accept being spied on. We're putting out the Fourth Amendment and saying, you are violating this. We see North Korea and Russia. They have signed an agreement to develop a new road connection between the two countries. Government officials from the two countries signed the agreement as part of the Year of Friendship program between Russia and North Korea. Again, Russia's going out, and China. They are all, both these countries are going out to all around the world and making deals because they're trying to push peace with economic growth. They're not bringing in forces to countries and saying, listen, you have to do what we say. We see the United States doing this. Because the United States, the system, is at its endgame. They're done. It's collapsing. Out in Ukraine, we understand they're pushing a major offensive. The OSC Special Monitoring Mission has witnessed 3 attempts by Joint Center for Control and Coordination to organize a ceasefire between Ukraine troops and the southeastern people. But what's happening there is very interesting. But as soon as they go ahead and they arrange the time where they're going to meet and have this ceasefire, an unidentified third party shows up and starts shooting. They're firing mortars, machine guns to break up the ceasefire negotiations. Now, of course, we all know where this is coming from. We all know that this is coming from the United States government central bankers. We all know that this is provocations to push the war forward. We know that these are privately funded units that are controlled to push war once again. That's all this is. They do not want peace. The central bankers did not get what they paid for. They paid $5 billion for the coup d'etat, and they wanted Ukraine. They wanted Crimea. They wanted a port on the Black Sea. They wanted the southeastern region, which is the manufacturing, and they wanted Ukraine because it butted up against Russia, a beautiful place to put missiles for the upcoming war. They did not get what they wanted. They also wanted to put Ukraine on the EU system and join NATO, which they are doing. And we can see that they're not going to sit back and just wait. They want what they paid for. And they will use any type of force to get it. If it starts a war, they don't care. They don't care if they have to send your brother, your cousin, your daughter to the front lines to fight a new war. It's the risk they're willing to take as they hide in their bunkers. We see that the Pentagon is definitely getting ready for the war that's coming up. We understand that we see a lot of strange things occurring where we see NORAD now going into Cheyenne Mountain. We see Walmarts are closing. We see Jade Helm. We see all the military assets being maneuvered out in Europe. We understand 60% of the U.S. fleet is going to be in the Pacific. The Middle East is ramping up. The war has started. And we see that the Pentagon now is looking to create their new cyber force. It's called blunt force trauma. The Pentagon, and we discussed this before, but we can see what they're going to do with this blunt force trauma. Basically, the Pentagon says, how do you make an enemy completely vulnerable? Well, one way to do it is to use a cyber attack. And how do you use it? Well, what you do is you hit them and you make their air defense system go completely blank in the first minute of the conflict. How do you make a surface-to-air missile radar show 1,000 false targets that all look real so you don't know where the real package is in the middle of that? Well, you use some type of cyber attack. You plant malware. And right now what they want to do is they want to build this cyber mission because they realize when we start this war, Russia, China, and the other countries, they're all going to resort to cyber attacks. This will be part of this new war strategy. And they will hit the electrical grid. They will hit nuclear plants. They will hit the water system, the gas system, the financial system. And the Pentagon wants to put together about 133 teams made up of about 6,200 troops. And they want to put them all together and get them ready as quickly as they possibly can for this new war. Because we understand that as this system falls apart, the United States government central bankers will continually provoke the other countries to start something. And if they cannot start it, they will basically push a false flag. And when they push this false flag, they will make it look like it was the group or the country who created this. And this is why everyone needs to be prepared. Because you can see it's not just the event, it's the ongoing war. Because you have to remember, this is not World War I, World War II. This is war on a different scale. This is a war where the United States is not isolated. Well, Europe, we know, is not isolated. We know Canada is not isolated anymore. Because these countries, China, Russia, and the other countries that are going to be involved, they do have weapons that can reach Canada, the United States, with no problem whatsoever. They're not sending over balloons with bombs on it, hoping that it gets to the United States. These are missiles that will be targeted at specific targets. They're going to use cyber attacks against specific targets. There will be war here. We need to remember this. Europe does remember. A lot of the countries there are saying, you know something, we like to back off. And you see France, you see Germany, they're all backing off going, okay, we see what is being done here, and we know what war is like right on our front lawns. The people in the United States, they really don't understand this. It's been quite a while. I think since the Civil War, we haven't seen anything like this that's coming. And we should all be nervous. We do not want this. And when the government, the central bankers say, look what happened, we have to go to war, this is the point in time we say, no, we know it was you. We are not going to war because as we know, and from the actions of China and Russia, they're not just going to go ahead and attack unless they're attacked. And if they use a false flag to pretend that they did something, we can all sit back and say, no, we know it was you. We are not going to work with you. We're not going to go to war. And we need millions upon millions of people out there saying, absolutely not. And this is the only way we can stop it, because if we don't stop it, it's going to be hell on earth. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.